Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Spotlight. Today we have David Lacombe joining us. David, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes, of course, Ada. It's good to talk with you again. For those who are watching this episode, my name is David Lacombe. I'm a fractional chief marketing officer for early stage companies who are either in healthcare or public safety. Prior to my business experience, I was also a paramedic for 20 years.
That's awesome. I love how diverse is your background, David. Well, let's dive into the goal of today's session. Basically, we know that a lot of companies just want to put some content out there, social media or ads, and they want just the customers to come to them when they haven't really built that trust with their prospects, or even like letting them know that they're out there. So we're aiming to show companies like this for public health that a strategic journey can really make a difference for them. So today's company that we are going to see is called Disaster Tech. I'm gonna show my screen. So I know that there are crisis management software to help organizations predict and prepare for different emergencies. Do you have any insights about the company, David, that you wanna give before we move into the plan?
Yeah, absolutely. At a high level, I like this company because they're veteran owned and they're also B Corp certified. So this gives you a little bit of insight as to what they're all about in terms of their mission and their values. So they're serving as a public benefit company, which means that they're not only trying to deliver, services to their clients, but they're also trying to do it in a way that benefits their company, their clients, and, society at large, which is really kind of great. And it looks like they're trying to help highly reliable organizations, whether it's the military or it's power or other ecosystem types of groups plan to deal with crisis situations. And what's cool about their software is they seem to be using AI to not only mitigate the crises, but also to do some what if planning of like, well, what if this happens? What would be the
Yeah.
most effective response that we could take?
Super interesting. I'm excited to dive into this plan. I think is definitely something different from what we have seen before. So let me see if I can. Great. So this is the plan that we got together. I think there's a couple of things that they are already doing here. So if someone from Disaster Tech come to you with this plan, you basically have just a little data that you know so far. How would you approach going from awareness, which is the number one here, to the conversion and fidelization, which is stage 7?
Yeah, good. So let's kind of organize how we think about this. Stages one, two, and three are really at a high level about helping customers to know about you, to like you, and to trust you. And if you follow most of the popular research that's published about how B2B buyers work, they're probably somewhere between 60 or 70% through their buying journey before they ever want to talk to your rep. That means that for them to keep coming back to your website, they need to find value. You need to be doing something different than your competitors. So really, when we start talking about stages one, two, and three here, let's keep that in mind. So when I look at what you've got there under stage one, video of how data analytics helps to predict and manage disaster risks, I think it's technically accurate, but it's kind of boring. And I think what we're really talking about here is when you think of the clients that they're working with, they are managing big problems. We're talking floods. We're talking about disruptions to power grids. We're talking about civil unrest. These are situations that are disastrous if they're managed poorly. So I think we really need to begin with defining what the problem that their customers experience and how, in particular, disaster tech helps them to prevent these disasters. So, number one is, above the fold hero section. Let's be bold and talk about who we help and how we help prevent the bad things that happen to them.
Love that. Super accurate. Why would you say that? What would you say that is the best format for them to approach this? Would you say besides their website? Would it be a video, a guide? How would you transform this first offer for them?
Yeah, I mean, we're really talking about that we live in an omni-channel world. That means that we have to be where our customers are. So, yeah, I'm imagining that public safety types of people, risk management types of people, they're not on TikTok, right? Or if they are,
Absolutely.
it's for their children's events. As professionals, they're probably on LinkedIn. They might be in various communities that are talking about these problems. So you need to kind of show up where your customers are first, rather than trying to pull them away from where they are to you. You need to be where they are. So I think LinkedIn is probably a good place. The website is fine, but remember, you're taking people away from where they are to come visit your website. So you're going to have to make sure that it's worth their effort to come and see you.
100%. Thank you so much, David. And how would you, how about moving them to stage two?
Well, we've talked about making sure that we have a really very strong hero section. This is the above the fold before we even start scrolling anymore. And then shortly afterwards, we need their ideal customer to see themselves on their website. In other words, am I in the right spot? Is this really for me, right? As a public safety person, or as a risk manager, or someone who's dealing with these various situations. So it might be a testimonial, it might be imagery that basically speak to people's fear. When you're a person who's making decisions about a significant purchase, you've got a credibility issue that you have to protect. So we need to make sure that people see themselves on your website, so they know I'm in the right spot. There's people like me here. Because when they don't know what next action they're going to take, psychologically, buyers need to feel as if like I'm in good company.
Absolutely. And I also feel like they like to feel that they are in control, that you're really speaking into their language, and that they're the ones who are moving from one stage to the other.
I'm really glad you mentioned that. When we build buyer journeys like the one that you and I are working on right now, there's just only so many ways that you can kind of illustrate them. So they tend to be linear, right? But we do know that people aren't always linear, and giving them the autonomy to go where they want to. Usually what we're trying to do is to convert people to come back. Like, we're not going to convert somebody to see a demo unless they're really very sure that you're a good fit and they want to invest the time with you. More than likely, you need to convince them to come back. So let's start thinking about how, in section 2 of the buyer journey that you've got displayed, that we're giving them good reasons to come back. So let's talk about some examples. It might be a newsletter where people who they already know and like and trust are being featured. Or within the newsletter, there's some type of suggestions about how to mitigate particular problems, or a case study. This leads them to kind of lean in and go, oh, this is interesting. These are my people. They're talking about things that I care about. And a way to do this is don't gate it, right? The second we start gating things, our spidey senses start coming up, and we're like, oh, I know what's going to happen next. The second I fill out this form, somebody's going to call me. And there's a time for that. I just don't think it's right now. So give them some content. This is like using the reciprocity principle. Without ever being asked, you just give them something that they like and that they get to consume it. And they're like, oh, wasn't that cool?
Yeah, totally. I feel like those first three stages is how much value you can give to them so they can trust you, and then they're interested more in your company. So, how would you approach the capture stage? I would say probably 4 and 5, because I know that they have right now going on a webinar that it's on stage 7. So, maybe you think it would fit into these stages?
Yeah, I think that we need to do a little bit of house cleaning here and do some updates to our buyer journey. So in stage 3, where we've got the free training session on disaster GPT, which is one of their applications, I think it's a little early for that. That
Yeah.
when we start making investments of our people's time and effort, we really need to know that we're dealing with qualified folks. So I would probably move that over to 4 or 5, and then I would come where you've got the webinar.
Yeah.
That probably belongs on 1. That as people are looking for solutions to solve their problems, a webinar is low risk. It, especially if it's short and it's succinct, and then you give them, some guidance of what to do after the webinar. I think that could be a great early start. So your original question was, okay, they're coming to our site. We're starting to see some signals like, hey, this is kind of cool. People are consuming things. Maybe they've checked out our newsletter. They liked it so much that they subscribed to the newsletter. That's really kind of cool because now we start to have first party data. Like until they voluntarily give us something, right? That it's really very difficult to see people's intent and to follow up with them afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So my recommendation is make it so that people are like, you know what? I think it's a fair trade. The
Mm-hmm.
quality of the information that you're sharing with me is valuable. I want to continue to receive it. I don't want to, lose out on this. I'll exchange my contact information.
100%. Once we have these contacts, I know that we're probably reusing a lot of this content and adding in like different channels where the audience are, or audience is. So how would we really capture now that we have captured their details? Like, how would you take them down to where we really want them at the end of the funnel?
Sure. There's a lot of conversation about demand generation. People call themselves demand, generation specialists or experts. The fact is, you can't actually really create demand. If a municipality is has a need, right, to be able to invest in software such as disaster text, that's the demand. They're not going to just consume your newsletter or your webinar and go, oh, we should make this investment. So I think what we need to do is be respectful. If people are ready for you to talk with them, then make it easy for them to do that. And if they're not quite ready, let them continue to consume content that they reinforces, right, this whole concept of them trusting you. So you could even use, right, buttons on your website. I think a lot of people use buttons incorrectly, right? That they're always making this assumption that you want to do this next thing. And you could flip it, right? Like, what do you want to do? Give them two choices. Would you like to talk to us now, or would you like to continue accessing resources for people just like you? And that way, I think you don't force the issue prematurely, right? Which could be a turnoff of like, oh, here it comes. I just click on this button and my phone already starts ringing, and now I need to make time for a conversation that I don't really want to have.
Absolutely. And I think for this type of company, it's super important to always stay on the top of mind of the user because disasters are something. There's something seasons when it comes to wildfires, to when it comes to like storms, for example. So even if someone doesn't need you right now, that but they might need you when the season comes. So you want to be the first on the top of their minds to so they can reach out to you.
I think that's well said. The seasonality of disasters, let's talk hurricanes, let's talk about wildfires, in the western part of the United States. It's been my experience that when those things are happening, people aren't at their desk waiting for the next email to come in, right? They're actively doing their job. They're working long hours, email, especially from people who they don't need to talk to. It just becomes deprioritized, and now it's 200 deep in the stack.
Yeah.
So make it easy for people if they want to talk to you right now, if they think that you can provide some value in their mitigation efforts, or let them just kind of slow ride to continue to receive information when they want it. I like what you've done with the trial and then a pilot. You know, there's always a risk factor that we have to take into consideration. That when we force customers into a binary situation, proceed or don't, you're more than likely going to have customers who don't proceed because they're still unsure that you're the right fit for them. So having lower risk proof of concept types of conversations allow you to enroll people, right? Hey, we think alike. We want to achieve, results for you. We think like you. We work like you. I think that goes a long way. So what you're really talking about here in stage, 5 and 6 is this progressive opportunity. It doesn't have to be linear. If people want to get right into the 90-day, pilot and that you've qualified them, that's possible. But if they want to do a trial and they want to be able to have some experience where, for example, the buying champion tinkers with it, They like it. They think it's a good fit. They go talk to their boss or a colleague. They bring them over. They have a shared experience. These things might not necessarily be visible to you. It's kind of like that whole dark social type of concept, but you're still building trust. You're enabling it, right? So that they can experience this on their own at their own pace.
100%. Um, really like what you said because I feel like for these type of companies who are probably very high ticket and people normally don't know if this is the right fit for them. I think this is super important. And I would say like this is a software that you probably need a couple of times. So I'd say that if, like fidelization of the customer is going to be really important. So how would you stay from seven and probably eight with the customers?
Yeah, I think there's a distinct. Yeah, it's a good point that you make. There's a distinction in my mind that it's one thing to have a user experience with the software because the people who are going to use it, they're going to want to see that. But remember, there's always an economic buyer, somebody who wants to understand the value. So my recommendation is that you pair user experiences from not only like how do I use the stuff to like, okay, who else has done this? What's been their experience? How has it benefited their community or their organization? So a little bit of testimonials, a little bit of case studies, maybe even some type of ROI analysis. Let's also talk about the risk of not doing this. So you've had a good experience with the software. You've told us that you have, wildfire experiences, civil unrest, hurricanes, flooding. What's the consequence if you don't manage those well, right? And so now you start to provide information to people who have to make the decision of like, we have a precious few resources. Why will we invest with this company? You've made it safer for us to understand that this is a good step going forward.
100%. Thank you so much, David. Before we wrap it up, what do you have anything else you'd like to add or any key takeaways that we should take in mind for disaster tech?
Yeah, I think that you're making sure that the website and social and wherever else you're showing up, whether it's paid or earned media, that you're consistent, right? There needs to be a cadence of consistent messaging that people know every time that they're going to see disaster tech. I know what these guys are about. I know that they're the right type of organization for me, so I'll pay attention to them. Nothing will frustrate potential buyers more when they go to look for you in their favorite channel and you haven't posted in 2 months or what you posted isn't relevant. You're saying happy Labor Day, which is great. It's a very nice social, salutation, but it doesn't really make me want to do business with you.
Thank you so much. Awesome. So I think this has been really great, David. If our audience wants to find you, where should they be looking at? Is it LinkedIn? You have
The
a website?
Yeah, absolutely. The easiest way to get a hold of me is LinkedIn. You'll see what I'm talking about. You'll see who I'm talking with, and you'll find me on LinkedIn at David Lacombe.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. It has been great to have you today. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Yes, it's been my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.